Hello and welcome to the EnPhase In Tune with Autism, the podcast. My name is Eileen Email and I'm your host. And I'm the owner of a company called EnPhase In Tune with Autism. And I serve the non-speaking autistic community through the lens of presuming competence and training purposeful movement with the letterboards. And I also work with their parents online in the mental health and spiritual space. My own life journey has taken me on a path, and I'm calling it a spiritual path. I believe that this is exactly where I'm meant to be. And I believe that some people are called to, in this life, live their life by their intuition, to live their life with their intuition leading them 100%. And that's what this podcast is right now. I never know exactly what I'm going to talk about each week. I made a pact to myself, and I'll say with God, with the universe, whatever word you want to put there. We're not going to get into the nitty gritty of personal beliefs, but the unseen intelligence that is creating and guiding this whole thing. I made a pact with God 2 weeks ago to record a podcast each week because I know that I'm being called to share, and for the purpose, I'm not sure. It could just be, and I say just be, I've learned the value in a person hearing their intuition and listening to it, even if there's not an outside reinforcement or reward that the human can see. I believe that hearing your intuition and following it is the reward within itself. I used to do the podcast here and there. It was hard to just keep up with it because I was going through my own stuff, which I won't talk about here. Again, like I was saying, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about each week, but I sit down and it's like, boom, yes, this is what I'm going to talk about. That's how it happened last week. That's how it happened this week. And so today it's definitely more spiritual in nature. I absolutely believe that the ears that need to perk up to this information, whether they feel like it's super duper lands or if it's just going to be planting a seed, they will be listening to this or will find this at the right time. So, here we go. Let's dive in. Before I get started with getting into the juice of this conversation, I have to explain a little bit about my own journey with this, okay? The way that I saw things before, I'll say 2020, the way I saw things was totally the materialistic paradigm. Prove it to me. It has to have evidence. And even though I was very intrigued by things that seemed out of the box or supernatural, I don't think I could ever say that I truly believed it or trusted it or any of those things. And so the idea of having an intuition and an inner voice telling me exactly what to do, a map made just for me to follow, wasn't something that I actually took seriously. The way that I lived my life was the way that I was conditioned to. It was like, do these things. These are the right things to do. This is good. This is bad. And, just do the thing that you're supposed to do, right? And a few things happened, and I'll say I gave birth naturally. And I always say you don't give birth naturally in this day and age and then not come back with extreme wisdom and just your mind blown because you're like, something isn't adding up here. Something is not adding up here. Just the physical experience of that, you wake up to something new. And let's say that I opened up physically, spiritually, mentally, all the ways. And then working with non-speaking autistics, especially in the way of presuming competence and tuning into the truth of, hey, the way that I was conditioned to see and understand and relate to and treat this group of people was completely wrong. Because the way that I was taught was to look at all the outside things and then put a certain meaning on those things. I was taught, okay, if they're doing something on the outside, they're doing it for 4 reasons, whether that be they're looking for something tangible, they're looking for attention, or it's a sensory seeking thing, which is a big thing. Like all these things can be big things, or they're trying to escape a situation, right? So that's the way that I was conditioned and taught. And so it aimed my perspective at putting things in a box that you can't put in a box, that you can't know. It's extremely distorted, that way of looking at things, because these are whole people having a whole different experience than neurotypical people. Okay, so just giving you that little background about how I was conditioned. Well, I told you that I 100% believe right now in Eileen's 35-year-old body, the seat that I'm sitting in and the experiences that I've had, that I am one of those people who it is my journey to follow my intuition and nothing else. So, because I had been living my life very much not that way, the time came in my life path where it was time for me to start listening. It was time for me to stop doing things the way that I was conditioned to do them. And it was time for me to start listening to my intuition, my inner voice, God, whatever you'd like to call it. And that voice kept getting louder. It kept getting louder. And I'd gotten to a point where I recognized, like, okay, this energy is coming in. This information from somewhere else is coming in, and it's not necessarily me. It's not something that I would do. It's not something I would say. It's not something I even want to do. So the information would be coming in. And this information is energy, and it takes up space. And whenever you don't pay attention to it and start listening to it, and you keep going against this energy that's trying to be born and trying to come out, things that are not good happen. Things that are not good. I was sick for a very long time. I ran a fever for like a year, and I'm not even exaggerating. It was horrible. So, needless to say, throughout this whole thing, once I started shedding all the things that weren't me, because I physically could not show up in those roles or in those masks anymore, through reading like an obsessive psychopath, journaling, learning what was actually inside of me, working with coaches one-on-one and working with groups for years, this is where I started to really tune into and understand that, okay, most of us have been conditioned to stay within the box, to color inside the lines, if you will, to not ruffle the feathers, to literally just follow the linear rules and like don't step off the path, right? We really thought too that A plus B equals C, and it doesn't. It does not. And the idea of like, oh, you have an inner voice. There is an intelligence to this thing that's telling a story. That whole thing was just not something that we follow or pay attention to. And to me, even, from my own perspective as a child, the people who said that they trusted God and they were following God and those rules and all that, I didn't get the feeling of something real. Like it felt like a conceptual thing. Like, okay, God is in the air and he's an old white man. Like that's what I felt like. That's what I felt like. And when you die, he's going to tell you all the good things you did and the bad things you did. And then he's going to make a call. He's going to make a call and you're going to go to a place that's good or a place that's bad. And it was a very conceptual thing. And it was also a thing that promoted a lot of fear inside of me. Over time in my journey, the experience of God and intuition and all those things is so palpable and so real that there's no question. There's no question about it. So now that you kind of know where I was, and I'm being very general, there are very crazy details to the story, but it was, okay, materialistic paradigm, I'm conditioned under it. I try to live life by the A plus B equals C in the linear fashion and do what I'm told in a way, and I'm ignoring the inner voice more or less, not listening to it. And I'm also not acknowledging the fact that reality is very different than the materialistic paradigm. our energy and our beliefs can affect reality. And the fact that we are actually responsible for our own reality, even though most of us don't know it, and we're creating by default, usually creating by old fears that motivate every single one of our thoughts, words, and actions in the world. But anyways, I digress. That's a little bit about me. So what was happening over the course of probably since 2020 until now is I was getting extreme insights from what I call my God voice or intuition. So I was getting information that didn't come from the paradigm. It didn't come from the physical. It would come in and it would impact me in such a way where I started to think, oh, I know this is true. You know, whatever information was coming in, which I'll share in a little bit, I'd be like, I know this is true. I know this is true. This thing that I just thought, I know this is true. It would also come in with major emotion. It would be emotion sometimes of like, oh my God, I cannot believe that this is true. Or it would be a love vibration with it of, oh my gosh, this truth is filling my experience in my body. And now it's making me cry because holy moly, it was that palpable. It was that real. So these things started to come in. And honestly, I've been this way since I was a kid. I've gotten things like this since I was a child, and I can pick out experiences and times when this came in so strongly, but I didn't acknowledge it as something that I should listen to because we were literally taught that the subjective experience, okay, and if you don't know what the subjective experience is, it's your own experience of the world, which, by the way, is the only thing you've ever experienced. The only way you've ever experienced the world is through your own subjective experience. And like we are literally conditioned to pretend like that does not exist when it's the only thing that exists. It's the only thing that exists. So we're conditioned to look outside of ourselves for answers when literally the answers are there. They're there. We may not be able to see them because they're behind so much shit. That shit being unprocessed emotions, that shit being limiting beliefs that were programmed into us as children. You get the picture. So I was getting insights. And so today I'm going to be talking about, I'll say, a big insight that I have that is like a driving theme in my life that I know that I'm supposed to speak on. So one of these things is, as a whole, and I'm looking at humanity from a perspective of looking at it as a whole, so I might be speaking in general terms here, but as a whole, as humans, we are always evolving. We are always evolving as a species. We never stop, and we never stopped, and we never will stop. So we're always going through changes of expansion in certain ways. Okay, we're evolving. And what I know from these insights, and now from all the books that I've read and, confirmation from other people who get the same message, is that we're evolving in consciousness. And we have been so programmed against the truth of our evolution and consciousness by society, by you name it, right? And so our dilemma here, our predicament, is that and again, I'm speaking in general terms, as humans, on the individual level, we are boiling over. We are confused. We are gasping for air. This is all a consequence of being conditioned under disconnection, being conditioned under distortion. And we have taken this disconnection and this distortion for our own truth. We have made it our truth. And that has consequentially led us to having the experience of having so much anxiety that you feel like you can't breathe, yet you don't know what the hell to do. You just want to keep checking things off the to-do list, and you keep creating more and perpetuating more of that anxiety frequency for yourself. And that's just one example. But we have all been conditioned under the untruth that we are disconnected. We are never disconnected. Shout out Danielle Sarank. She was my very first mentor on this journey. And she says, we are never disconnected. We might feel disconnected, but we are never disconnected. So we have been conditioned into believing in our own disconnection. We've been conditioned into endorsing the disbelief in ourselves and thinking that we have to effort and work so hard to get the thing on the outside. And we truly believe in that. And it's running humans collectively as a whole rampant. And that's why all the reasons, all the bad things in the world, that's literally the reason why. That's the ultimate core reason why. I get the sense metaphorically of like a pendulum swinging way too far in one way. Literally it's and if you're watching the video, yeah, it's swung so far this way that it cannot swing anymore or it's going to break off. That's what's going to happen. It's going to break off. Humans have successfully distracted the shit out of themselves. It can't go any further or it'll break. And on a mass level, it must swing back. It swung so far out of balance and it's reached its peak. And the way that this manifests in the physical collectively for humans as a whole, things like war, fighting hate with hate, thinking that we're broken and we need a pill to fix us so we can keep going, so we can keep doing the thing that society has conditioned us to do. So we can keep looking like we're good and looking like we're happy and meeting the needs of the societal box, right? When really we're just doing things out of obligation because we've been conditioned under so much shame and guilt, and our bodies are literally screaming at us for a break, for us to pay attention to them. And we're all running in circles and loops. I felt this truth to my very core, and I feel it every single day. You know, a lot of times you're not connecting with someone truly. You're connecting with the patterns that they've been conditioned under. What you're witnessing is not true connection. It's them participating in their ego payoffs. And I'm using a lot of spiritual terms here, but what I mean by ego payoffs is like you're not connecting with someone's, and it's hard to use this word because I feel like it's so overplayed now, but you're not connecting with someone's authenticity. You're connecting with how they're showing up so they can stay safe. Like the ego payoff. Like I'm showing up this way so I can look this way. Like I'm showing up this way so I can appear to be this type of person. And it's not wrong or anything like that. What it is a real person inside who is trying to be accepted by the societal box and stay safe. But this on an individual level is the product of the disconnection that we've been conditioned under. And for some people, they're living in this role and it's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, I believe that we all came here to play a role in a way. And some people are playing the role that they're meant to play and they're perfectly content. There's others of us, and this podcast is for you, where we can't take another step without tuning back into our connection because we feel like it's do or die. And that sounds dramatic, but if you know, you know. If you know, you know. Let me, before I get into non-speaking autistics and their role in this and what they've taught me and the insights that I've gotten about them and their parents, before I get into that, let me explain a little bit more. Again, because if you're not in this world, but you're resonating with it and you're like, I want, like, I know that my ears are perking up. I know this means something, but I don't quite get it. So many of us might think we're showing up in the world as like who we are, but really we're showing up to stay safe. So a simple example, and this multiplies all over your personality, is you would have been one way as a child. You would have held a certain energy. You would have felt certain ways. And because maybe the people around you showed unacceptance of that, you decided to block that energy off and put it away and put something else in place of it that's more acceptable. So all of us have done this to a certain extent to form how we show up in any situation, what is our personality. And so whenever we're connecting with each other, we're not really truly connecting with that one inside who's fearless, who is just emanating authentic energy. We're connecting with the person's patterns that have an ulterior motive, and that motive is usually to stay safe. So that's what I mean when I say ego payoffs. It's like I'm showing up for a payoff. I'm either trying to get something and look a certain way or escape a certain feeling. It's like always has a payoff. And you're not just showing up as you are, independent of anything else, despite what others think, despite anything, right? And that has led us, because a lot of these ways of disconnection lead to a lot of dysfunction. And so that is what has caused the pendulum to swing so far one way that it's about to break off and go into space. So let's talk about our beautiful non-speaking autistics. And I'm being very general here, very general. I'm not saying this is the experience for everyone, but in my experience and how I see non-speaking autistics, and this is what I felt, these are the insights that have come in continuously, the insights that have woke me up in the middle of the night where I'm on my knees crying, recording into my phone because it's overflowing inside of me. And so I finally stopped, ignoring these things and decided to share. We've been conditioned under the misconception that they don't understand very much and that they're low cognitively. And I like to call that old paradigm, which we're shifting away from. In my opinion, the reason that we were ever bamboozled and tricked into actually buying into that reality is because of our conditioning under disconnection as a whole, because of our conditioning to believe that we are disconnected. If we were completely unconditioned by doubt and all of those other things, and we were able to just have our ability to perceive energy be untouched by societal conditioning, there's no way we would have ever gotten that wrong. Not on this level. Not on this level. We would have never gotten that wrong. Would have never thought that they're not in there. We just wouldn't have. We would have known, because we have lost the ability to discern truth from untruth by being conditioned under the materialistic paradigm, been conditioned under putting all of our stock and attention and energy into the disbelief in ourselves and our connection. That's how we got it wrong. And I believe that we are being called back to rediscover our discernment and our truth. And it doesn't look like anything with the ego being paid off. It's just an emanation of truth, and that's it. So on a mass level, what we're going through is exactly that. We are coming back to our intuition. We're coming back to knowing that it's a real energy, to discerning and acknowledging that it's a real thing working in our life. And when we learn to tune in and listen to it and let it be born and let it play out in our lives, then we will see the evidence of that. But so many of us literally can't even take that step because we have no regulation in our intuition. We are just like, oh, I'm so fearful, I don't know. Let me just do whatever I did in the past, which was conditioned by fear. And so we keep perpetuating the same cycles. Now, let me dip into what I've learned from non-speaking autistics and the insights that I've gotten in regards to this predicament that humans are in collectively. So, as I talked about how we are conditioned to put our God voice away, put our intuition away, and show up as our patterns to, out of obligation to do the right thing and all those things, follow the A plus B equals C, right? We have all been conditioned to do that. You want to know the way that we're actually able to physically do that in reality? What allows us to do that? Our working motor systems. Our working motor systems. Okay? Because as a child, you are open to energy and you're open to the truth and you're very connected to what the hell you want to do and what you don't want to do. But your heart is saying one thing all the time as a child, but the world is taking you by the hand and saying, no, come on, this is the right way. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do to be a good boy or girl. And that whole situation can be explained in so many different directions, but that's just one example. So what we start to do, like, okay, for me to be accepted and for me to like do this thing, I have to ignore the voice inside. I have to ignore those big true energies that I'm experiencing. And I have to show up and look this way. I have to sit in the chair and I have to nod and I have to ask these questions, but don't ask that question. And you can do this, but don't do that. Yeah. And so you start to show up in that way and you start to disconnect from yourself, even though, remember, we're not ever fully disconnected. The sound of the inner voice that keeps you connected to the natural intelligence, the flow, the synergy, the acceptance, the love, that gets more muffled and more muffled. And, the world that's pulling you by the hand, you start to walk faster and you start to walk with that. And so you don't listen to the one inside anymore. And the way that you start to, again, walk faster and show up is because you have the ability to do that. You come in your body with your working motor system and you show up and you say, yep, I am what you want, society. I am here. I am here to be the perfect whatever you want me to be, right? And so you're showing up like that, even if your inner voice is screaming at you, no, this isn't right for you. No, right? No, you're not that dumb. No. Yeah, so you show up to each of these situations with your working motor system. And so even if, let's say you're so angry by something, you can bite and you have all that anger energy coming through, you're pissed off. And if you were being authentic, you would say, I'm pissed. But you don't do that because that's unacceptable. What you do is you bite your tongue and you say, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. And you're able to totally say that it's fine. You're able to participate in that situation and lie, essentially, because you're ignoring the truth of the energy. So getting back to what we're going through collectively as humans is we can't ignore the truth of the energy anymore. The energy's there, it's emanating, it's rolling, it's momentous. We can't keep using our motor systems to ignore it. We can't keep doing that because we're suffocating as a society. When you believe in your disconnection as a human on an individual level, and then, having a whole collective human species believe in their disconnection on that mass level, it's not good, right? It's not good. The pendulum has swung too far. So we're coming back into the balance. So non-speaking autistics, their role in this, they don't have the motor system where they can, even if they're comprehending something, if we're talking to them and they're comprehending it on the inside, they can't look at you and nod and say, yeah, I get it. They can't give you that confirmation. They can't show up in a way that's socially, they can't show up in a way that we have thought to mean that they get it, right? So if we're sitting in a chair, me and a non-speaking autistic who's apraxic and who's not connected to their motor system or their purposeful motor system, but somebody's talking to us and they're telling us, they're teaching us, I would say math, but let's not go with math for me. Let's make it believable here. So they're teaching us like a story, and I'm nodding and I get it and I'm listening. And so we've been conditioned to think that, oh, I'm getting it, but they're not, because they're not showing me with their body that they're getting it. Right. But that's not true. They are getting it. Okay. So with this whole thing, they can't show up in a way that we've been conditioned to think So you get the picture. They can't show that they're understanding and comprehending in the typical way. And this goes for so many things. Oh, and like the things that they are mirroring back to us within our own stuff that we'd buried in our subconscious. Like we are not even going to get into all that, but it's, yeah, there's a lot of things that we do in the world that aren't purposeful. We just do them by fear. Yeah, we do them by fear energy. So what they're here to have us experience is someone who is in the vibration of themselves. They are in the vibration of their perceiver space, who they are truly on the inside. And they're not able to show up with the typical personality. I believe that their essence shines through, which is a beautiful thing. So many of us are it's like, what is my essence? Am I just showing up to like meet the needs of the box and you don't even know what your essence is? It's something you left in the past when you were a little kid. So they're vibrating at a point of truth is what I like to say, because they can't participate in the motor patterns of being fake. They can't show up in a way that's dishonest. I think a lot of us show up in a way that's dishonest, but it's unknowing. It's unknowingly that we're being dishonest. It's under the surface and we have no idea how to tackle it. But we know that something doesn't feel right. So they're holding the vibration of truth. They very well know who they are, and they know that they're not their body or their patterns, because they can't be, because their bodies can't show up against what they're feeling, because they don't have that motor control. So being in this vibration is a gift. It has been a gift to me. Because before I even knew it, there was something about it. From the very first, a long, long time ago, one of the very first ABA jobs that I had a zing with one of these kids, and I felt that. I was like, oh, truth, presence. And at the time, I wouldn't have had the language for it, but it was real. And I felt it. And remember, your subjective experience is all that you had. So if I would have known at the time how to honor what I was feeling, but I didn't. So that is what they're teaching us. They're holding that vibration of, I'm not a patterned personality. I can't show up and, lie to you in certain ways. I'm experiencing energy at a very high level. And I'm processing energy in this body, and my body's very sensitive. Yeah. And so I believe that they're here to, in so many different ways, to trigger the current paradigm, to throw a wrench into the hamster wheel that we keep trying to spin on, to point us to the truth of energy and how we've been kidding ourselves, and to slow us down, bring us the vibration of presence, to get us back into our bodies, to actually pay attention to sensations in our bodies. Because we have been living in the conceptual mind pattern for so long to try to please the societal paradigm, I think that they're here to hold that opposite vibration of something truly real, and to slow us down, to throw that wrench, to stop the wheel from going so fast in the wrong direction. And I'll probably speak more on that to give more examples of my experiences and what I've been through on that end. Yeah, they're here to show us. They're here to show us that in so many other ways, in so many other things too. Because, when you start doing for instance, the letterboard relationship, and it's your job to train the body in order to have those gross motor patterns that are purposeful so they can begin to spell on the boards. What you have to do is go against everything you've been conditioned by. So you can't just look at their outside body stuff and like respond to that as if it's purposeful. You have to really tune in to beyond the physical and understand that the person in there is real and they are beyond their body. You have to tune in and connect with that aspect of them so you can stabilize that connection with each other and gain traction on the synergy that is required for the letterboard relationship to be successful. And so they're teaching us to dig deep. They're teaching us to dig deep. And I would, I'm not sure, but I would almost bet that a lot of letterboard practitioners would acknowledge this fact. I don't know. I haven't really heard anyone talk too much about that. But for me, it's understanding that I have to give them a presence that's palpable enough for them to literally for them to ground into and hold on to so they can hold their focus outside of all of the sensory overwhelm or underwhelm, right? The lack of feeling their body, and tune into that so they can then start building their skills on the letterboard. And that's just kind of giving an example of what they're teaching us here and how it's required of us to acknowledge these types of things in order to build it in the 3D. Yeah, you have to, and maybe that's what the next podcast will be about, is belief. And sometimes it has to be palpable and big enough to move things in a certain direction, because it's literally fighting against the energies of disbelief. But anyways, hope you enjoyed, hope that made sense. I really love where I am in my business right now. I have the physical side of serving the kids with their bodies, building those purposeful motor patterns. But I also have the online side that I feel like parents that I've worked with for years have been needing in so many different ways. I have my master's in mental health counseling, but I'm so happy to have this offering in my business now to literally, it serves as so many things. Number one, it serves as a safe space with someone who understands your world to a certain extent. And just having that safe space can be transformational for my clients. They can jump into a new energy point, a new attraction point from just having that safe space to exist in. So, because when you're seen and heard, and it sounds so cliche, but when you are seen and heard in a space that is holding the frequency of safety, you transform, you move up, you literally shift up, your energy frequency actually goes up. So I love, and I'm talking towards my one-on-one container right now. In case anybody is interested, I do have 2 spots left for the end of the year. So that would be October, November, December, maybe a little bit in the January, because we're halfway through October. So it serves as that space, which is healing in itself. It serves as, I didn't get too much into it, but I also believe that non-speaking autism parents are really being called to, well, so many of them, we all have different roles, but so many of them are literally being called to remember their power. Because remembering your power and your intuition is an actual real thing, and it's an expression in the world. And they're being called to do that because we are shifting from old paradigm to new paradigm. And we're going to need parents who are in their power, not doing the thing where they're fighting and blaming out of victim mindset. No offense, I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but we have all been programmed into victim mindset, and working from that mindset gets you nowhere. It just gets you more havoc. It just wreaks more havoc. There's no doubt that in so many ways you have been a victim. There's no doubt that your life is absolutely challenging and you need more help. But it's going to be people standing in their power to boom, bring the power, bring the truth. So the shift to the new paradigm, there's no choice. It's just I'm here and it's happening. So I believe that a lot of parents are being called towards that. In order to do that, they need the help, support, and guidance of doing that inner work, of reconnecting with their intuition, because there's no doubt that we've all been conditioned out of it, right? And we don't know how to discern it and see it in our lives and put stock into it and grow it. So it starts with that piece. And then another piece is, which I love so much, it's acknowledging the spiritual nature of their child and their child's spiritual gifts, and stepping into the pattern, the behavioral pattern of actually acknowledging those things and having that become a norm, and it becomes a driving force in their life. They start acknowledging the divinity of themselves and their child, and they suddenly realize that, okay, this is not all for nothing. Like, this challenge is not all for nothing. This pain is not all for nothing. It's because I'm being called, and I can do this, and I trust my journey, and I trust my child's journey. And even though there was pain, there's a purpose to it, right? Love that piece of it. And another thing is, and I'm talking about the one-on-one parent container I have that is called Beyond Words, is me being able to support them with the 3D stuff. I'm very well versed in the brain-body disconnect, and I've been working through that lens since 2018. So it's coaching them on understanding the brain-body disconnect, and when those big challenges come in, those 3D challenges with their child, they know what to do, because I'm coaching them on what they're thinking, what they're saying, and what they're doing, and how they're relating to their child in this challenge, and how they're meeting this challenge. And so they start meeting this challenge from, I can handle this, acceptance, courage, and we're moving forward, over, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. My nervous system is so dysregulated. I just don't know what to do. Just extreme overwhelm, right? And so we're putting all the things in, baby. We're doing all the things, and it's beautiful, and it's transformational. And I love this work, and it's one of the things I was meant to do. And I love it because it changes that person and the whole family at a root level. And it is something that you have to be open to, obviously. That's why I love podcasting, and I love social media in that way, because I can fine tune my signal and put it out. So I'm attracting those clients that are in alignment with my message, who actually need my help and will accept it. So that's the cool thing. So if you feel called to this type of work, and your ears are definitely perking up, and you're just resonating, I'll put all my socials in the show notes, but you can email me at EnPhase. So that's EnPhase, EnPhase, intune@gmail.com, and you can just ask me about applying to my one-on-one coaching program. And I'm also building a parent community. It'll be like a subscription where you can, again, all the same principles, and it can go in the spiritual direction. So if that turns you off, maybe not for you, but there's still a lot of value in it with approaching the 3D. So that'll be, you can ask questions during the month, and I show up 2 times within the group, second and fourth Tuesday of each month, answering the questions. And once I build that community in the future, I'm definitely wanting to do Zoom calls and stuff like that. And I'm really wanting to create everyday practices for people to start healing their nervous systems and tuning into the energetic world and discerning their intuition. I'm really wanting to create daily practices that are just for these people. So that is also something that's in the works, because doing something that was created just for you is it's so potent, and it'll penetrate past all the things and move you forward. And how do I know this? In my own experience. I'm doing a group right now that is exactly that. It's these practices were created for me, and they have moved me forward immensely. So extreme value there if you are in the inner work world, or even if you're not and feel extremely called to, and you know that this is your next step to move you forward, move your family forward, enhance the connection between you and your child with who they truly are beyond their body. So thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next week.